Let's start a podcast about our mental health for no good reason why. Let's call it Mind Cake.
Hello everybody and welcome to another slice of Mind Cake. Mind Cake! With me, Lee Crompton. Still no Paul, but this is technically our week off. So, we are bringing you a bonus episode, which is an episode that came out 12 months ago, because if you're anything like me, you could probably do with re-listening to Dr. Jan when she tells us all about setting goals for the new year. So, if you're the vast majority of people who have already made a Horlicks of your New Year's resolutions, then we thought we would replay this episode, which will hopefully help you feel slightly less guilty, is that the right word? Slightly less beating yourself up, because, you know, we've all been there, sister. I should mention that Dr. Jan has already sorted me right out this year. So what I normally do at this time of year is I have a Fox planner or a passion planner, and I write down my tasks to do each week, and then what inevitably happens is I don't do half of them and they get transferred over to the next week. But then other jobs come along as well and I have to do those. So it just gets a bigger and bigger list and it becomes quite overwhelming. So what I thought I would do to help this is make the mega list in the back of my passion planner. It's not a sex aid, by the way. It's just a diary. What am I talking about? So the big list in the back, and then you've got a monthly thing. So then I could transfer a handful of things from the big list to January, and then put a list, take from that list and break it down into weeks. So that each week I've got a manageable chunk of the big list to do. I thought that would be helpful and a good thing to do. And I felt just completely overwhelmed by this. So I was talking to Jan about it, and she's gone, well, basically you've made a list of work that you've got to do over the next 12 months. And I've gone, yeah. And she said, is there any fun stuff in there at all? And I went, no. They're all like jobs I've got to do around the house and things I've got to sort out. And she's gone, right, you've written down a list of 12 months worth of jobs. You're wondering why you're feeling overwhelmed. And I've gone, right, well, if you put it like that, yeah, that kind of makes sense. So I haven't really made any New Year's resolutions other than maybe factor in some time or try and factor in some time for some fun stuff. And anyway, you don't need me to tell you this because Dr. Jan is about to tell us. If you haven't listened to it, it's a bloody good listen. And if you have already listened to it, I would recommend listening again because there's some top tips in there. And Dr. Jan will be coming back in 2025 for some more episodes. So grab your cocoa. You might be listening first thing in the morning. Don't grab your cocoa. To John Hannah, don't grab your cocoa because, yeah, you've got a whole day of work ahead of you. For anybody else, just enjoy the episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another slice of Mind Cake. And I am joined by one of our favourite doctors. No, not Dr. Dre, who I don't think has any medical qualifications. It's the return of Dr. Jan.
Hello, Lee. It's nice to be back.
How are you?
Am I the first return guest?
You are the first return guest.
I am honoured, Lee.
Mm-hmm.
I am clearly honoured. Thank you for inviting me back. It's nice to be back.
Well, you're very welcome. It's mainly for my own benefit that this is going to be a bonus episode for the end of January. So tonight is Burns night. Have you had your haggis, sneeps and tatties, Jan?
We've toasted both the lassies and the laddies today.
Have you?
As part of our Burns night tradition.
Okay.
Be fair, vegetarian haggis. Not that I'm vegetarian.
Mm-hmm.
but vegetarian haggis, controversially for me, is infinitely better.
I'm still not 100% sure what's in haggis, and I don't want to know.
If I'm honest, I think that's probably safer.
Mm,
I think
okay.
not knowing is wisdom.
But I know that they're
But
caught in the garden.
they are, and you can draw them. I think some people have seen them and have drawn them, so you go to most Scottish gift shops in Edinburgh, Glasgow, Loch Lomond, these types of places, you will find them.
Which
You'll find
obviously
imagery.
people have seen them because people have caught them to eat.
Clearly, yeah,
So
obviously.
they've seen them. Anyway, in a previous episode, me and Paul were discussing, I think it was the Christmas special, New Year's resolutions, and I was regaling my resolutions for 2023, which were, amongst others, I was going to lose 23 pounds in weight because I think I was, let's say, I don't know, 16.6, and I wanted to get down to 15 stone. That might, again, sound quite a lot of weight. That's less than £2 a month. Just, it's not too ambitious.
Yeah.
And the other one was run a 10K personal best. Now, of those two, I ended up the year at over 17 stone. So I actually put on half a stone and have now 2 stone off the target weight that I set to the beginning of last year. And in terms of the 10K, I didn't even run a 10K, let alone run a personal best 10K. So what we said was the psychology. We needed Dr. Jan back on to talk to us about the psychology of resolutions. And I thought, again, your SMART objectives, I was making them so they were attainable. And again, so this year, me and Paul decided that we were going to do 10,000 steps a day.
Yeah.
Which I thought was, again, fairly achievable.
Yeah.
But we're now the 25th of January, and I have only achieved 10,000 steps on one day. And that is basically when I got lost looking for the wild waterfall for some cold water therapy. So failed. Paul has done very well, I believe, but I just thought, I think it'd be very worthwhile having you back on, Jan, to talk about the psychology of New Year's resolutions and why we shouldn't beat ourselves up when we fail.
I think the struggle of New Year's resolutions is something that is very common. And I actually looked at some of I'd like to say research. I think it was Times Magazine, it was the New Yorker that were kind of citing these kind of figures. So I'm not sure it's peer-reviewed published research, but the kind of the current thinking is about 10% of people will achieve their New Year's resolutions. Another 10%, 15% of people might go part way to achieving some of the goal, but the vast majority of people, 3/4 of people will not achieve their New Year's resolutions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you've already touched on some of the reasons why that might be. You've mentioned SMART goals, and I'll come back to that later. So I think you are in very good company,
Mm-hmm.
because you are with the majority of people who struggle to achieve their New Year's resolutions. And we spoke about me coming on to talk about that. I think there are some really good insights, I think, of how psychology can help us think about that. And again, you've already touched on, because what we don't want is people beating themselves up.
Yeah, because it's a new year, you enter the new year with lots of enthusiasm and lots of, aspirations.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, the first couple of days I hadn't done my 10,000 steps, and then you're like, ugh.
The critic comes out and tells you, look, Lee, here again, it's a struggle. Why are you not achieving this? And and that vicious cycle of self-criticism then perpetuates, doesn't it? So I think if we think of New Year's resolutions, I mean, really, they're simply goals. That's all they are. We give them a lot of weight. We give them a lot of onus because they're, in this special day. But, many people will always also feel that the Mondays are also that special day. I will do better come Monday. We have a cultural kind of pattern of thinking where there is this, these significant days. New Year, there's even more pressure, there's even more weight. And I think if we think of some of the reasons why New Year resolutions are a struggle, I think the first place to look is the context in which those decisions are made. So most people make resolutions in between that lost time between Christmas and New Year.
I hate
You
that time.
sound like you were very ahead of the game. You know,
Mm.
you were already thinking of it in kind of early mid-December. But really, most people, you know, Christmas has passed, you're half a tin of Quality Street down, you're in your loungewear, in your living room, you know, it's quite warm and you're thinking, oh, it's cold outside, but you're quite cosy and you're thinking, next year I'm going to do better.
Mm.
And so we make, you know, those resolutions in that context. And in that context, it is the perfect setting event for two things: self-criticism and unrealistic goal setting. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, when we are self-critical, we are viewing ourselves through a harsh lens. And this then informs our decisions around those goals. If we are viewing ourselves through that harsh lens, we know that it's much more difficult to achieve goals.
Yes.
That, you know, that is the case. If we are viewing ourselves through that, you know, an alternate, more compassionate view, then goal setting is much more likely to be realistic and it's much more likely to be more achievable. When we, you know, kind of think about what types of goals people set, how often do we hear goals like, do you know, what matters most to me next year is I connect with creativity, because that's a really important value for me. And what I'm going to commit to is one afternoon a month, I'm going to pursue my photography hobby. That's what's most important to me. You know?
Yeah, but
and
like you
what
say,
I'm
we
going to
don't do that. It's also,
No,
or they're all weight related or diet
yeah,
related or gym
yeah,
related.
yeah. I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week. I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. every morning. I'm going to eat 1,500 calories a day. I am going to, you know, they are often weight related, fitness related. And when you think about the lens that those decisions are made through, it is often the harshest of lenses. We are
Well, I'm
often,
making them. I'm usually still stuff. I am definitely next year gonna lose. I'm gonna get down to 15 stone as I put another 3 quality streets into my mouth.
absolutely,
The irony
absolutely.
isn't lost on me, but I
No,
think you're right. So for example, like so for me, so creativity, I could completely get on board with going, right, I'm gonna come up with 2 new storylines in the next 12 months, or I'm gonna go to the London Screenwriters Festival, or I'm going to whatever it is that's in
yeah,
line with, like you say, my values,
yeah,
rather than, yes, I'm gonna get down to 14 stone or whatever.
yeah. And when you've made goals that are aligned with your values,
Hmm.
what are their chances of success versus goals that are aligned with the harshest version of our mind?
Yeah. So the outcome is like you say, because I'm already thinking of the remaining 11 months of the year of
Yeah,
what ideas I could come up with for storylines
yeah,
and how I can align my creativity, whether it even is this podcast.
yeah,
Well, because do you know that
absolutely.
there you are? There's one, because we're going to get Officer Crabtree on the podcast. I don't know if you're aware of this or not.
No, not yet.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, you've been away, haven't you? So you need to
I've
catch
been
up.
on holiday,
Yeah, you
so
have been
I'm
on
a
holiday.
little I'm a
Mm.
podcaster's 3 behind.
Mhm.
But yeah, so
Mm.
I'm not aware of Officer Crabtree.
It'll make sense when you when you listen back. But Officer Crabtree, Arthur Bostrom, I think his name is, the guy who played Officer Crabtree in Hello Hello. That is my mission to get him on the podcast in 2024. Anyway, enough of that. But that already is exciting. I'm thinking, right, ideas for scripts. The thought of going out and doing 10,000 steps. So how I try to combat that, again, I
Yeah,
mentioned it on one of the earlier podcasts, was I came up with a menu.
yes,
So on the menu would be, I don't know, drink 2 liters of water, do your 10,000 steps, do half an hour of exercise, whether that's running or walking or whatever, meditate, 8 hours of sleep, don't drink alcohol, don't snack, whatever
yeah,
they were, whatever positive
yeah.
things. And then
Mhm.
out of that, I would say, right, I need to do 2 a day. So it might be
Okay,
that I haven't got time to do 10,000 steps. Cold
yeah,
water shower was another one, but I have got 3 minutes to have a cold water shower.
uh-huh,
Or, oh, I can't, the thought of drinking 2 liters of water today is just not happening. But I've got
yeah,
time to do 10,000 steps and whatever it is.
yeah,
So at least then you're doing what you fancy.
yeah,
And I think that's helped, but you're almost taking it a step further and go, well, what do you actually really want to do, and what do you actually really want to achieve, rather than I just want to fit in last year's jeans.
Going back to the podcast where we talked about ACT, it is connecting with what matters to you most. It's connecting with those values and having a kind of clear view of that, I think, that can help us move into a kind of healthy headspace, a positive health space, rather than a threat-focused health space of a, that sinking feeling in our chest because we've got to do 10,000 steps a day. The other thing that, we don't, that are barriers, if you like, to achieving those goals is we have to think about what made it difficult before Christmas. It's not that we didn't know before Christmas that walking 10,000 steps a day was a good idea, that drinking 2 litres of water and cold water showers were good ideas before Christmas. So what made it difficult then? Because we are creatures of habit and we have patterns of behaviour. There are reasons we do what we do. Often there are very good biological, social and psychological factors which perpetuate our behaviour. There is often, always really, a purpose or a function to our behaviour. And if we don't understand that purpose, what that purpose or function is, then how can we meet it in a more sustainable way? So we're just removing something, then our old strategies will of course re-emerge. The drive to do those things again will come back into play. And then what we'll do is we'll engage in those old patterns of behaviour that served a purpose or a function. But then when we do them, we're experiencing them with a sense of failing rather than compassionate understanding. So there's something about understanding why we do what we do.
Yeah.
The example I, often give of this is if someone drinks 4 cups of coffee a day and they come to me therapeutically, or they make the New Year resolution and say, do you know what, as part of my towards move, I want to cut out caffeine and I don't want to drink 4 cups of coffee a day. Part of creating success in that is understanding why you drink 4 cups of coffee a day. So if you just take it away, but the reason you were doing it is because you've got a very, very busy life, you're spinning all the plates, you always have to be switched on, you've got a 16-hour day with multiple competing demands, then it makes perfect sense why the coffee's there.
Yeah.
And just cutting it out becomes immeasurably more difficult. So there's something, as I say, about the context. There's a lot about the context, actually. Something about understanding the context of when we make decisions. There's something about understanding the context in which our behaviour arises, social, psychological and biological. But we also have to understand the lens that we are making those decisions through. If we're doing it in a way of, we're just creating more sticks to beat ourselves with, then that is an almost impossible task. But if you're doing it in a value-driven way, moving towards, then that becomes achievable, or more likely to be achievable.
Yeah, and it's interesting that something that Paul picked up on, because that stick that I was beating myself with, not only because I hadn't done my 10,000 steps, but because I was having Facebook memories come up showing me on a video on the 1st of January going, here I am, I'm doing my 50 miles, started my 50 miles in January for Maggie's, big smile on my face as I'm running, pushing Erin in the pram, having recently had 2 major operations and radioactive iodine treatment. And here I am 3 years later, not even doing 10,000 steps any day. So beat yourself up about that. But I said to Paul, and Paul made the point that he did it as well. We did it for a couple of years, but he did it that year as well and the year after. And he made a conscious decision to go, right, I feel better for doing the 10,000 steps. I'm going to carry on doing it in February for my well-being, health and well-being. And he didn't. And the reason he didn't is because he's not got that pressure on him to, well, I can't. It's like me. I remember that, again, I said this, and you'll like this. I said to Gemma, I was really struggling after the 2 operations and the iodine treatment. I was really struggling to kind of put one foot in the front of the other, let alone do 50 miles in January. And Gemma said, after about a week of me huffing and puffing and wheezing and really not feeling very well, Gemma said, just stop, just knock it on the head, stop. I'm like, but I can't. I've raised all this money and I can't just go, well, I'm not going to bother. And she said, Lee, you've just been diagnosed with terminal cancer. I don't think anyone's going to turn around and go, oh, well, what do you mean you didn't bother? Can I have my tenner back, please? So it's that. And I think I said, again, I'm repeating myself from previous podcasts, but if I've done triathlons or 10Ks or whatever it is, half marathons that I've done in the past, I've only really entered those ridiculous events.
Yeah.
Because for the fear of looking like an absolute dumpling.
Yeah.
On the start line and not
Yeah.
being able to do it. But if I haven't put myself under that pressure, well, as we've proved, I haven't done it. So unless I've got an event in, 3, 4, 5 months time, I'm going, I've really got to get out there and get some miles under my belt because I'm going to look like a right idiot.
Yeah.
Which again, I don't know if that's particularly healthy, but I always found that I really enjoyed the event because people get really nervous at the event, and I never got nervous at the event because you've done it all. Then you've done all the training, you've managed to get to the start line without getting injured, and the pressure was off. Then the pressure for me was, oh God, I've got to get out and do another, whether it be, especially with a triathlon, a bike ride, a run, a swim, because you've got to try and juggle all 3 plates. So I'm not sure fear is a good way to healthily approach things either. But
what you're describing to me is how I think of that in my mind as threat-based drive.
Mm-hmm.
Is that if we think of a kind of emotion regulation system, we think of them as threat, drive, and soothing. When we're in threat, what do we do? And quite often what we do is bounce into drive, almost distract ourselves or, focus on the next goal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost a way of just trying to kind of move your mind away from that threat. But of course, that doesn't lead to sustainable change.
No.
It's threat-based drive. I'm doing this so as I don't feel like I look like a fool in front of other people, like I feel like I'm failing. And, what we know is that tends to increase people's experience of difficult emotions in the longer term, because actually they are part of what we, spoke about in the last episode we did together is they are not noticing, naming and sitting with those difficult emotions. They're just bouncing out of them, but by doing. And that has a short-term benefit, but it doesn't lead to that sustainability.
Change.
Yeah.
So do you make do you make resolutions? And if you do you call them resolutions, or do you have a Dr. Jan name for them?
We have special psychology names. No, we don't. Of course, I'm human. Have I made resolutions in my mind many times over? And am I part of the 10%, the 15% who do some of it, the 10% who achieve all of it, the 15% who do some of it, or the 75%? Well, the 75% are clearly my people. I think it's over the last few years, and I've certainly moved towards what matters to me most. So rather than a resolution that's based in that self-criticism or based in that threat, that threat focus, I try and connect more with my values. There's a few of my colleagues or friends have kind of spoke to me this year about their focus for the year. So rather than a resolution, they are going to live, they are moving towards more adventure in their life. That makes it more important. That's what matters to them most this year. New experiences, that's what matters most to them this year. I think that's a much healthier, sustainable way that helps us develop a more compassionate wisdom rather than perpetuate a self-critic. I, as a psychologist, think that's a healthier move.
As we know, it's all about the compassion, not the hitting yourself with a stick.
Yeah.
I'm already thinking, as you've been talking, I've been thinking about, sort of fun things rather than I've got to go out and run 5K, 3 times a week.
Yeah.
You could make it, even if it's family related, and go, right, well, we're going to have a games night twice a month or whatever. We've just been playing, do you know what? Because Erin's getting to an age now where you can kind of play like proper games with her.
Yeah.
And she's got Mr. Men, Guess Who? And because
that sounds brilliant.
It is awesome. So yeah, she is well into a Mr. Men, Guess Who? So we've had a nice game of that tonight. Yeah, now that she's 4, the big 4. Okay, so I'm not going to ask you to share any because I don't think that's fair. Any of your.
I'm happy to share.
Oh,
so
you
this
are?
Year,
okay.
I'm happy to share. So this year for me, it's connection. It's connection with those who matter to me most. That's what I'm moving towards, and that's I think. I would imagine that many of your kind of podcast listeners that would resonate with. So again, from an ACT perspective, it's thinking about what that looks like, that committed action. So what do I need to put in place? It's not just saying the words or having it in mind. It's trying to put that into a committed action. And so, I've put in place a number of events where I'm connecting with those who matter to me most over the next coming, there's no time scale particularly on it. I'm not saying once a week or once a fortnight. I'm kind of just, I'm making sure that I am prioritising that movement in my diary, that moving towards that in my diary.
Excellent.
And that's, we're at the end of January, so I don't know if it will sustain, but it's certainly something that is, I think, a much healthier move, a value-based focus, rather than critical stick to
resolution. Yes. Critical resolutions, no. Value-based focus,
action.
Yes.
Yeah. Value-based action.
Yeah. Okay. By the time I do the next podcast with Paul, I'll have thought, and maybe put it out there to the listeners as well, into what is your New Year's, not resolutions, but focus. What are you going to, whether that's say game night with the kids or, I suppose there's nothing wrong with, my mate Bob, hello Bob, he runs 10K every day very quickly.
Yeah.
And if that's what he wants to do, then...
Again, thinking that workability question, a healthy or helpful message to people is, if you're part of the 10% where your New Year resolutions are impacting and it's working for you, grand, keep doing that. If you're part of the 15% but it's working some of the time, grand, keep doing that. But if you're part of the 75%, notice if there's a critical voice in your head that has either set that goal or is now giving you a hard time. And think about whether being hard on yourself is likely to serve you. What would you tell a friend in that situation?
I would say come up with some creative ideas, and also to help you think, you could maybe have a couple of Quality Street.
What's your favourite?
I was about to ask you that. Do you know yours?
Oh, of course I do.
What's yours?
The green triangle.
Oh, that's just solid chocolate, isn't it?
No, it's kind of nuttier. It's got a softer middle and it's kind of nuttier. What's yours?
Oh, it's the pink one all the way. I know it's controversial because we had this discussion at work the other day. Is that the strawberry ones? Yum yum pig's bum. And the thing was, nobody else likes them, so there's plenty of them left. You always end up with the toffees. You always end up with the round toffees that you break your teeth on.
Yes.
Nobody likes those.
I was very disappointed. I was about to say devastated. That was too strong. I was very disappointed when years and years ago, Rosie's stopped doing coffee soft centres.
Oh, no, thank you.
I don't like coffee at all. But it's, the coffees, they were my favourite and everyone else hated them. So I always got
them. But it's the same with, is it Revels?
Yeah.
They've got is that the one where they got we don't know what you're going to get?
Yeah.
I'm sure they've got a coffee one. And again, it's like what's it's Bertie Bott's every flavoured bean. Like getting the coffee Revel is like getting the snot. So I've gone back into Harry Potter. If you haven't read Harry Potter, then it's...
I have read Harry Potter.
I know you're... Yes, you like a bit of Harry Potter. Right. Have we covered resolutions? Are you happy that you've covered all your bases? I think
you feel... Yeah, I think
I do. Yeah, I think you've got it above and beyond. I mean, again, this was going to be a 10-minute chat, and I think we've done probably best part of half an hour, 40 minutes. So, no, I'm more than happy with that. And for my benefit, I feel much better about my resolutions that are no longer resolutions.
No.
And yes, just keep thinking about my value-based living.
Yeah.
And apply that.
That's, to be honest, I think that's the towards move.
Yes.
That's what takes you towards. I think values, can help you think more clearly about what it looks like to move towards the rich and full and meaningful life. Even if it would be a suggestion for people to do the values exercise and just pick out what value or values matters most to them. Russ Harris's values checklist, it talks you through it.
Does it?
Yeah.
We'll put a link on.
You don't need the cards.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Jan, we've got less than a minute left. This was going to be a quick chat, but you're an absolute superstar. Thank you as always. And again, I still don't think it's the last we've heard of you.
Thank you very much, Lee. It's been lovely being on again. And yes, if this is not the last time you hear from me, then that's okay.
It's not the last time.
And if it is, yes, I hope that people get something out of the podcast and that they're not beating themselves up at the end of January.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jan.
Take care. Thank you.
So there you have it. That was Dr. Jan telling us all, which I'd forgotten, don't be so hard on yourself and actually make some resolutions that are fun. Which brings me on to last week's poll, which I was asking for my 5-year anniversary. I obviously, and this is why I needed to re-listen to the episode, should I try and run a 10k PB, a half marathon PB, or even try one of these backyard ultras that Rachel was talking about? The poll results would suggest don't do any of that. Just have a nice, relaxing spa day. My friend Hannah was worried that I was putting too much pressure on myself. Whatever event I did, I would need to do it for charity. So then I put the pressure on to raise enough money and the training. What was I trying to prove to who? And having seemingly survived terminal cancer, why then try and kill yourself doing some mad event? So, yeah, I'm taking a leaf out of Dr. Jan's book, and having spoken to Dr. Jan, again, she said, well, why? It sounds like you're looking for external validation. What are you trying to prove? To who? Is it something you would enjoy? And I've said, well, not particularly, no. Well, why are you doing it then? Why don't you do something you might enjoy, like go on a writer's retreat for a weekend? Or she did actually say Zanzibar, which I think is a little bit decadent. But just do something I enjoy. So what I've decided, again, I think this is all in the spirit of this episode, is I'll probably do a park run and then just go down the pub. And maybe go out for a meal with my mum. And that is how I will mark the 5 years. And yeah, I think at times, especially this time of year, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. It can be a difficult time of year anyway. So yeah, let's take a leaf out of Jan's book and just chill the fuck out. That's probably enough from me. Next week we'll be back with a proper episode. Hopefully Paul will be back too. So thank you for listening as always. Be kind to yourself and remember to get yourself some cake. Take care.
Let's start a podcast about our mental health for no good reason why. Let's call it fine.